Okay, welcome everybody. Let's bring the committee of the whole meeting to order for March the 9th, 2026. I'll briefly take the time to acknowledge that this meeting is being held in the traditional territories of our friends, our neighbors, and our Treaty 8 partners of the Fort Nelson First Nation, as well as the Prophet River First Nation. We recognize our treaty and we recognize the rights within that treaty. We also recognize the enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. So please be advised that this afternoon's meeting is available to the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. Are there any additions, council, staff?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any public who wishes to comment on this agenda? Online? Nobody in the room? Okay, everybody's okay with the agenda? Let's get going then. Petitions and delegations. So we have a delegation 5.1, the Sustainable Projects Group. I'm going to say Heloise Hildreth and Kaylagh Corish to talk about the Toad River Community Energy Plan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us.
Did I get your names right?
Yes, you did.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we'll turn it over to you.
Alrighty. I think I sent some slides through for presentation. Are they? I remember saying that they would be presented by you, and then I'll just prompt you to flip through them. Does somebody have them available to share?
Just setting that up now, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you. So in the meantime, we'll start with some introductions, I guess. My name is Heloise. I have been the lead analyst on the Community Energy Plan project, which we have been completing for Toad River. I've been working on this project for just about over a year now, I think. And so it's really great that we're finally being able to present it to the council and everybody who is a stakeholder. I'll let Kaylagh introduce herself as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kaylagh. As Heloise mentioned, it's great to be here for the presentation of this project. I oversee the team at Sustainable Projects Group that Heloise is a part of, and we conduct our work in Vancouver and the greater province of BC. So yeah, really excited to be here and to hear Heloise's presentation on the work she's done to date.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just let me know when the slides pop up and I will start presenting. But in the meantime, again, I'll give an overview of what the Community Energy Plan is. So essentially, it is a document that outlines the current energy performance in the community of Toad River. So we looked at a few of the residences, we looked at some of the community buildings as well. And we did an analysis of the current energy consumption and performance for those buildings. Oh, I think we might have shared the slides. Fantastic. If we go through to the third slide, I think the second one there is just a little explanation of what I'll talk about. So we've skipped over the introductions already. So I'll do a summary of the community energy plan that we've done, and then a little time for questions and answers at the end. So if we go to the next slide, it will be just a review of the community energy plan. So as I was saying, it's a long-term plan to meet the community's future energy needs. So with the analysis of all the buildings and energy performance that we did so far, we take that information and put it all together and create we identify a list of demand-side management measures, which are essentially energy efficiency measures that you can implement in the buildings, and they will help reduce energy throughout the community and at the building level as well. And then we also take a look on the longer scale or more long-term scale and look at some energy generation measures. We look at renewables in the community and see how we can really transition from the current diesel grid that Toad River is producing electricity with to more renewable sources. And this is funded through the Community Energy Diesel Reduction Program, CEDR for short. So the goal of that is really to reduce diesel consumption in communities. So that's a small focus in the report as we keep going through. So Alongside all of this, we have developed actionable recommendations for measures that can be implemented in the community, and then future studies that can be done for those more long-term measures and larger scale projects. And then we've also done a little bit of engagement with community members, such as the residents. We had an interim meeting, which I myself wasn't a part of, that was held with the analyst who owned the project before I did. But yeah, we've had a little community engagement. We did a review meeting with the residents not too long ago to discuss everything as well. So we'll move through to the next slide. Our findings in a nutshell, essentially what I have listed here is the list of demand-side management measures that we identified. So when we do the analysis of the buildings, we look at a range of different measures. They can be anything from building envelope upgrades, such as roof insulation, wall insulation, triple pane windows, which I have listed here, to high efficiency upgrades. They could be such as installing heat pumps, which have a much higher efficiency than regular furnaces or boilers. We look at LED lighting, low flow water fixtures, basically anything that can reduce energy consumption within a building. And then we narrow it down based on the building's characteristics and everything like that to give a list of measures that we really look into in detail so that we can figure out how to reduce energy in each building. So I've also listed all of the applicable measures or the applicable buildings we identified for each of the measures we identified here. So when we chose these measures, we were focusing on reducing the amount of energy required for heating within the building, because something that we understand is that it can get very cold up in the northern BC. And so residents quite often struggle to heat their homes adequately. So that's why we've really focused in on insulation and triple pane windows, because they reduce the amount of heat loss in buildings, which in turn reduces the amount of energy you need to heat the building. So it's sort of like a win-win situation where hopefully these measures will help improve the ability to heat homes and residents aren't as cold in winter, and then also reduce energy consumption and cost. And then the other ones we have here are things like instantaneous water heaters, which reduce, they're really great for small buildings where there are large amounts of standby losses compared to when you have a tank water heater, because it means you're not holding onto hot water and you're just heating it when you need it. So it reduces energy consumption. We have LED lighting. This is a great measure for reducing electricity consumption really quickly. And it's one of the really low-hanging fruits that we always love to recommend when we are doing efficiency upgrades. And then we also have something that was requested by one of the residents, which is the cold climate air source heat pumps. So this was requested because they were looking for innovative technology to upgrade to help with the heating in homes and try and reduce energy consumption. And typically air source heat pumps don't heat low enough, or they're not efficient at low enough temperatures to withstand the harsh conditions in Toad River. So what we did was we went and found some heat pump models that have more advanced technology in them. And so we've created a ECM, or energy conservation measure, that focuses on these cold climate heat pumps, which can heat down to at negative 37 degrees. And they have 100% heating capacity to negative 15 degrees. So after negative 15 degrees, they're not quite as efficient, but they still are able to heat down in super low temperatures, which is fantastic. If you'll move to the next slide. This is a summary of all of the demand side management measures that we looked at. It's a lot of numbers and a lot of things that I won't dive into, but for each of these ECMs, we do a financial analysis as well as figuring out how much electricity or propane that they're saving. And then also we figure out the utility cost savings as well, and then the greenhouse gas emission reductions associated. And then we've ranked all of these ECMs as well based on how much energy they reduce in the community, or energy consumption that we reduce. And then we also give them a financial score, which reflects how expensive they are to implement and paybacks. So lower cost ECMs with a significant amount of utility reductions will receive a high financial score because they pay themselves off a lot quicker. And then we also rank them based on how we I'm totally blanking on the word, how we think the community will perceive the project in terms of feasibility, whether they like the project or not. And this is based on the interactions that we had with them in our interim meetings, what they decided their priorities were, and our understanding of that. So I'll move on to the next slide. These are our energy generation projects that we identified, and these play into the long-term strategy a little bit more because quite often these projects are larger and much more financially expensive, so they require a little bit more analysis and careful planning before they are implemented. So we identified some rooftop solar opportunities for the residences, which are smaller scales, so they could be implemented within a shorter time frame. And we also identified a renewable site, which I think is behind the lodge, if I'm not mistaken, where you could install a large ground-mounted array for community generation. We also investigated ground source heat pumps, which is another heat pump technology that involves heat transfer and drilling loops into the earth so that you're transferring heat with the ground rather than the air. And this is a great technology, because, especially in cold climates, because the ground temperatures are much more stable than air temperatures, which means you don't have that risk of the temperature getting too low and not being able to heat anymore. The other projects we looked into were run-of-the-river hydro project. This was mentioned in a previous study, but we thought we'd revisit this as it's been a long time since a feasibility study has been completed in the area. And so we took a little look into how much energy could be generated from a project like this in the Toad River. And we looked into wind, installing some wind turbines in the community, some biomass, which unfortunately we couldn't do a full analysis of because we don't have any wood consumption data available for the project. And then also switching the current diesel generators, which generate all the electricity for the community, to natural gas generators, and sourcing the natural gas as liquid natural gas from a company that is operating out of Fort Nelson, which I think is a great idea. Is liquid natural gas is it's lower emitting than diesel, so you're reducing your greenhouse gas emissions. And then another of the priorities that we identified for Toad River residents was they rely on Fort Nelson a lot for goods and services, and so they really were keen to support Fort Nelson in this way as well. So if we skip to the next slide, I also have done a financial analysis and energy savings analysis of all of the projects that we listed here, and then ranked them in the same way, where we looked at community perception and then financial feasibility, as well as energy savings and how much energy could be generated by projects such as these. So we'll move on to the short-term strategy. When we did our ranking, we took a look at all of the projects that had the highest overall weighted score based on the rankings. So we decided that the LED lighting upgrades and then roof and wall insulation upgrades, as well as the rooftop solar upgrade, could be implemented within the next 5 years, which is the short-term strategy, to improve building envelope performance, to increase heat retention in the buildings and reduce reliance on diesel for electricity production. And then we also identified a few additional measures that could be looked at either alongside or after you implement those high priority attractive demand side management measures, such as the cold climate air source heat pumps, if they are feasible for the current grid capacity, intelligent parking outlets, high efficiency make-up air units for the lodge for their ventilation system, and instantaneous water heaters. And then another key aspect that a community energy plan should encompass is that it should be a constantly evolving document. So we want to be able to keep on completing energy audits for other buildings in the community, because what we've done so far is we've taken a sample of 5 buildings and then we have applied it to the rest of the community. So it's really important that we continue to look at all the other buildings in the community to really target energy efficiency measures for each specific situation, because each building has different equipment and everything like that. And then also measurement and verification. We should be ensuring that the projects we're implementing are actually achieving the energy savings that we expect them to. And then if they're not, then we should be looking into why this isn't happening. So that's a key part of the short-term strategy. Then I'll move on to the long-term strategy, which is the next 20 years or so that is encompassed in the community energy plan. And so this focuses on transitioning to sustainable, secure, and affordable energy systems, and really diversifying the current fuel mix. So the key studies that we think should be completed for potential renewable projects and other generation projects are the solar installation at the renewable site, as well as the run-of-river hydro, because that could generate a lot of electricity potentially. The ground source heat pumps would be a great way to diversify heating systems and utilizing thermal generation in the area. And then also switching the diesel gas to liquid natural gas generators for the grid consumption. So if we're producing electricity through natural gas, it will reduce emissions a lot, and then it will completely eliminate diesel generation for grid electricity in the community, which is one of the goals of the CEDR program. And then we also think that the community energy plan should be updated every 5 years, assuming that some studies have been done, some projects have been implemented, technologies change, recommendations change. There could be some great new technology that we don't know about yet that emerges within the next 5 years. So it's really important, as I was saying, to continue updating information and ensuring that you are looking at the best of the best at the moment. So that's all I have for today. I ran through that pretty quickly. It's a huge document. I would definitely recommend reading it. We go into depth with a lot of things if you have the time. But yeah, for 20 minutes, I wanted to save a little bit of time if anybody had any questions or answers about this community energy plan or the presentation today.
Heloise, thank you very much for that presentation. Are there any questions for Heloise? Deputy Mayor Gurley, please.
Hi, thanks very much for that presentation. My question is around funding to put any of these projects into practice. Did you examine different funding options at all? And is that maybe in the report that I haven't read yet?
Yeah, so we have included a section in the report that is dedicated to funding opportunities that could potentially help assist implementing with some of these projects. Because this project is done through the Community Energy Diesel Reduction Program, it also unlocks a range of funding from that program as well that could be utilized to help implement some of these projects. And that can cover things like insulation upgrades, window upgrades, heat pumps, anything that we've looked at. We've sort of tried to see that it will be reflected with some sort of funding opportunity.
Can I have one?
Yes, ma'am.
So my second question is around heat pumps. I looked into heat pumps when I was in Prince George and looking at the possibility of bringing in the technicians required to install them in the community. And at the time, he told me that the problem is with servicing. If you don't have the expertise in your community to service them, then there's not much point in installing them. I'm wondering if you gave any consideration to that in your weighting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the technician that you were talking to is absolutely right. Servicing is definitely a key issue if you're in a remote location. One of the sections of the community energy plan is a section that outlines jobs and engagement that could potentially be created from installing such measures that we've recommended. And so we have identified that some of these measures will require perhaps some service technicians in the area or at least nearby. And so we've identified if training should happen for those sections there.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just, that's not quite a question. I just wanted to add that there is discussion going on. There's energy discussions going on in the creative side of energy sources. And I know that there's wood to diesel projects that are sitting in the background. And so when you start creating a green diesel, then I think that is also going to fit in. When I look at the time frames that you have, I see you've done a good job of identifying the low-hanging fruit, the insulation and windows and various things like that, and LED lighting. Those are all very good things. But in the longer term, let's include the fact that if we can create a green diesel, then the diesel reduction side should be less of a focus, and the green energy as a replacement should become the focus.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. And I agree. Like that's definitely something that would be included in that 5-year or sort of reanalysis phase of the community energy plan as things become more prevalent and like green diesel is being produced more mainstream. So yeah, thank you.
So I'm wondering about the use of the plan. Does the plan automatically go to BC Hydro? I know they're looking at the reduction in diesel, particularly for generating electricity at Toad River, and I'm wondering about the the liquid natural gas microgrid and/or the run of the river project. I'm just wondering if Hydro gets a copy of this, or is that up to us to send it to Hydro?
I believe that is up to you to send it to BC Hydro. It's not my understanding that we will send them a copy,
Okay.
but the report is yours to share with who you choose to.
And as I look at this liquid natural gas microgrid in your costing grid, when you look at the simple payback in years, it says never. So it'll never pay back. So
it does. And this is a cost analysis based on the company that I contacted from Fort Nelson. So that's Cryo Peak Limited. And they provide rental services for their equipment. So generally they recommend that you do a bit of rental for initially so that you can see if the systems work. And then there's something to consider would be actually purchasing the equipment. And then in that case, you wouldn't be paying the rental fees each year. And it could potentially change the how the project pays back. But at this stage, we just went with the Cryo Peak because they were the supplier from Fort Nelson and were close by, and they transport along the highway, so they would be passing by to river as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, I don't see any hands up, so thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for the work that you've done on it.
Thank you so much for having us and letting us present to the council. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to a second delegation, which is the Aboriginal Housing Management Association's James Bourque. So is James here?
Yes.
There he is. Hi, James. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll share my screen.
Please do.
Thank you for allowing me to be here today. Municipal collaboration on this resolution to the Indigenous housing for the UBCM next year. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Kaylagh today and in Prince George, and our office is in Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish territory in West Vancouver. A little bit about AHMA. So AHMA is Aboriginal Housing Management Association. We are the first self-determined Indigenous housing provider in Canada. We are BC's for Indigenous by Indigenous housing expert for those living off reserve. So AHMA supports 54 nonprofit housing providers across BC, and those are all off reserve. So approximately 75% of Indigenous people do not live on reserve and are not supported through any federal funding programs or any other government programs. They're the distinction focused. AMA exists to serve urban populations with an Indigenous lens in collaboration with municipalities. And I think that's even more important now as more and more services are being offloaded onto local governments, funding cutbacks, more and more cutbacks and more services being asked by local government. Our members already do the critical work in your communities every day to keep people housed and healthy, but they're also doing with less funding. While uncontrollable costs are consistently rising anywhere from 15 to 25%, our members have not had a base increase in more than 2% in the last 5 years. We are concerned about the impact this has on municipalities if Indigenous housing and service providers can no longer remain operational. AMA is working closely, I think, with Fort Nelson, one of our projects going in the community right now. And, that's really important. Some of the projects that we have and some of the local governments we work with are really good to work with and really friendly. And that's why we brought this presentation to Fort Nelson for UBCM 26. It's widely known that the playing field is not even for Indigenous people, and they have different socioeconomic reality that requires a more holistic and committed response. Indigenous people are 13 times more likely than non-Indigenous people to experience homelessness at some point in their life. Currently, AMA members are holding back the floodgates. Some are thinking of selling their assets because they can't keep the basic bills or can't afford to support the residents they serve appropriately, or to pay staff with the expertise required to support the complex needs. We need your help to pressure the provincial government for appropriate resources because 40 to 80% that are experiencing homelessness are Indigenous, and the allocations for prevention and supportive resources are not proportional to the data. AMA believes that housing can provide and should be a nonpartisan issue. We provide the province with data-driven advice on Indigenous housing needs, but what's missing is a more intentional investment in prevention that keeps the pace with rising with costs. For every dollar invested in Indigenous housing, the social return is $7 or $6.79, and that includes an estimated $2.90 of government savings resulted in decreased service use. The municipal partnership and collaboration on urban Indigenous housing results in reduced long-term costs for the government and higher quality of life for Indigenous people. And this is a look at our resolution. Some of the whereases, I think we got too many in there. We're going to try and trim them down. But in consideration of everything I've just shared with you, here's a draft of the resolution that we hope will start a conversation between your committee and the municipalities to work hard towards a resolution at UBCM 26. AMA is already in the position to lead, but continues to face challenges with the province. That's why we're coming to the UBCM members to help advocate for urban Indigenous housing in your communities through this resolution. And it is to create an Indigenous-led cross-sector housing alliance. Therefore, be it resolved that UBCM call on the provincial government to establish an Indigenous-led cross-sectional housing alliance composed of senior representatives from the health, justice, social services, housing sectors with strong and equitable return in urban, rural, and northern Indigenous representation. And therefore, it be resolved that the mandate of this alliance include the development of a provincial framework recognizing the safe and adequate housing as essential infrastructure, and to coordinate a sector-wide adoption of public endorsement of this position by professional service advocacy, academic associations, and their member agencies. So this resolution was put through by the Prince George City Council already, which is kind of exciting that we put this through, and it's going to the North Central Local Government Association AGM in May of this year. We presented throughout their province, and we're just looking for, I think, Vancouver, Squamish, Nanaimo, Port Hardy, Langley, Port Moody. I think there's about a dozen that we've met with already, and we're just looking for more support for UBCM this year. I know it's a really trying time with the huge funding cuts that have been happening, but I think that we need to pressure the government a little more. We report to BC Housing, and we need to be reporting with the government. We need to ask the government for their help. And that's it. If you have any questions.
Okay. Thanks very much for that, James. Are there any questions for clarification or anything from the council? Comments? I have a couple. So I believe the things you say to be true, because it makes sense to me, all the things that you said with respect to homelessness and Indigenous participation. But this resolution is asking us to ask the government to a cross-sectoral housing alliance to be led by Indigenous led, it says. So nothing in this talks about local government and the involvement of local government. I mean, it's really talking about being Indigenous led, and then all the senior representatives from the province getting involved. So I want to know a little bit more about how you're going to involve local government into this if you want us to support it. And the second is, you talk about, the need for investment, and I absolutely agree with you that there needs to be provincial investment in low-cost housing across the board. Not just with the Indigenous population, but there's no investment ask in this resolution either. So I'm just wondering on what your comments are on, because if I was to stand up at UBCM and try to support this, I'd want to be able to answer those questions, right? Because that's what it'll take. There'll be people out there who will ask about it being Indigenous led, no local government involvement, and what the investment ask is.
So AMA actually has a 10-year urban native strategy, and I could have that sent to you, but we do have a 10-year plan that has been presented to the provincial government. We're just working on our next 3-year strat plan now, but the provincial government does have our 10-year plan, and I could have that sent to you. I don't know the numbers at the top of my head, but it's significant money. I believe it was like $10 billion.
Right. Okay. Yeah, if you could send that to us, I'd appreciate that, because I think this is a worthwhile resolution to get behind. But I just really need to know more about it. And with respect to local government involvement, have you got a comment about that?
Well, actually, back on the previous slide where it talks a little bit more about the whereases and having the municipal government participation, I think we could add some of that verbiage into the further be resolved. I'm meeting with Garth Frizzell on Friday. He's a local city councillor. He was part of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee who brought this motion forward. And Garth has talked to us about trimming this down and moving some of this around a little bit. So I can definitely talk to our Director of Public Affairs and have that verbiage put in there if it's possible. But yeah, we do need to do a little bit of work on the resolution itself, but it's more edits than anything else. So
yeah, well, yeah, for me, the local government involving them would need to be in the resolution itself. So
yes,
therefore be it resolved. One of those, you can talk about it up in the whereases, but for me to get behind it, I think local government needs to be a big part of it, particularly if this housing is going to be in communities. So yeah, anything you can do and I'll it is my intent to be at NCLGA this year, so I'm looking forward to whatever changes you might be able to make and any information that you might be able to get to us.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I hope to be presenting this at the NCLGA.
Good. Hopefully you'll have one of the members who will sponsor it.
Yeah, it's already sponsored by the City of Prince George.
Oh, okay, perfect. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you very much, James. Appreciate your time today. Okay. That brings us to reports. The first report is the Northern Regional Energy Dialogues. For our information, I'll turn it over to staff. Ms. Dolan, welcome. I think this is your first time.
It
presenting
is
the council,
indeed.
so welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So as stated in your report, this is informing you of our recent collaboration with the Northern Regional Energy Dialogues team and plans for their engagement with communities within the municipality towards the end of next month. As detailed in the report, this collaboration provides the opportunity to address shared priorities, primarily the development of the Northern Rockies Climate and Energy Action Plan, which will be updating the outdated 2010 Greenhouse Gas Action Plan and the 2015 Community Energy Management Plan. I'd just like to emphasize that by leveraging the Northern Regional Energy Dialogue team's research capacity and their community engagement experience, the municipality can really optimize resources, reduce duplication, and ensure that our updated energy and emissions strategy is grounded in community input as well as aligned with broader policy directions.
Good, thank you. Did they ask us or did we ask them to do this?
As far as to my knowledge, they reached out to us in December of 2025, informing us of this phase of their research project and wondering if they could have some discussions with us, at which point they were invited to the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting in January.
So they're interested in our perspective then, obviously.
Absolutely.
Ah, good, good. Good, that's the only question I had. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, so there's no ask, it's just really informing us that this is gonna happen. Are they looking for our participation or is it just open to the public?
Right now, we're following this report. We're going to engage with them around some logistical planning, but they are really wanting to hear from communities on what's going to work for them in terms of dates and times and grouping communities together. I think they would be very interested to hear what the municipality and staff and council has to say, and we'll provide opportunities for that. And really, a focus of this report was to inform council that we'll be facilitating introductions between Fort Nelson First Nation and Prophet River First Nation as well.
Good, good. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully we'll be. I don't know why they're smiling.
But you know, we're going to be engaging with population.
Check.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you. We'll look forward to, it sounds like it's a staff initiative right now, but it'll be very interesting to see how you take it to the public.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, that brings us to 6.2, which is the report on the code of conduct and development and establishment of a code of conduct. So I will turn it over to his staff to have this discussion. How are we doing for time? 5:37.
So before council is a follow-up to the January motion that was passed regarding a draft code of conduct. So there's a bit of background there in terms of how it came to be that municipalities, there's stronger language in the charter in terms of municipalities' obligations around reviewing and developing a code of conduct. And then there was just a bunch of resources and material included. So what we have before you is a sample. We didn't want to make any assumptions of what ought to be and what not ought to be in a code of conduct for council. And essentially, this is your framework to live by. So we did include some of the some language around the complaint process, which I think was raised as part of council's discussion in January. But it follows the model framework for a code of conduct that UBCM provides, but the detail is up to council for your development. So opening it up to you for discussion. I'd love to hear what you think.
Council, floor is open. Councillor Andrews?
It's ticked all the boxes I had in my mind. Like I had a few questions as I was going through it. When I went through it the second time and answered it for me, like I think it was a well done document. And it's like I can't think of an incident where I couldn't be referred back to here and figure out a way to go about dealing with it.
Okay. Councillor Roper?
Yeah, I like the principles. I like the wording. Maybe just one suggestion for filing a complaint. So it needs to be filed with the CAO and perhaps maybe an alternative in case the complaint involves a CAO. Not suggesting anything, but just to have that alternate there just in case. But yeah, I think this is good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think we can probably look at that. This is a code of conduct for council, though. I think staff is already held to a different, right? Staff has a.
I misunderstood. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
doesn't mean you won't have a complaint against the CAO, but I think, yeah.
Yeah, so to that, some communities don't even involve staff for council code of conduct complaints. It goes straight to an investigator,
Yeah.
which is usually a lawyer. So I took the simplest approach, but entirely up to you if it's something you'd like to be handled kind of outside of house.
So I liked the 6-step, I guess the 6 points that you had in the complaint, pre-screening, informal resolution, if we can, an investigation if that's necessary, findings and recommendations, and then a decision around what a resolution might look like. I think that was good. I had a question though about 4 where it talks about the integrity commissioner. Is that a thing, or did we make that up? Or is that like a provincial thing? Are there integrity commissioners out there, or is it somebody that we would have to go find?
It would probably be associated with your investigator. Yeah.
So there might be people out there that are doing this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you pulled a lot of this in from other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense we put it in there, but I've never heard of an integrity commissioner, so I just wonder if it's a thing.
But we have one for BC.
Oh, is there one for BC?
So there used to be the.
Oh, you looked it up?
What was it?
Oh,
The
okay.
Auditor General there used to be a local government Auditor General, if you'll recall. That's been dissolved, but perhaps there's a formal body.
So, and I guess that will depend upon the pre-screening and council's thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. I have a concern around the CAO and corporate officer determining if the complaint is within the scope and not frivolous. Is that kind of putting them in an awkward position? Like, I feel like it would be if I lodged a complaint against Counselor X and then somebody told me it was like, then I'm mad with you, and then that could just go downhill. So I don't know. I think maybe we could look at some other examples of how other communities handle that. I just don't want to put our CAO and corporate manager in that kind of an awkward position.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable taking out the word not frivolous and vexatious. I think figuring out if it's in the scope, because then it just comes back to council, right?
Well, that would be, yeah.
Right? It's all they're doing is saying, yes, it comes within the scope and we think you should all talk about it. And then I think that's where we would either solve it ourselves or ask for that independent investigator, depending on the seriousness of it. Or can we just talk it through because it's simple enough? Somebody made a mistake on Facebook or made a mistake in a meeting or something like that somebody takes offense to. I mean, that's that, right? Somebody's taking offense to whatever's gets said. And but I think I would get upset if somebody judged my complaint as frivolous or vexatious, but not whether or not it fit the scope.
Yeah, I would be good with taking out those words. Yeah.
Okay. So a period at the end of the.
Yeah. Cool.
Do you envision that's what your role would be and just really turn it back? Provide information, obviously, with whatever report you come back with that, it fits and here's sort of the information that we found about this sort of a situation.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah. It makes sense for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's that. No, go ahead. Yeah.
So just a question. Would we intend to implement this policy retroactively, perhaps to the time where we should have considered it? Or would this policy just kind of start from the time we implement it? And then I just had a question about the 30 days of becoming aware of the incident. What if someone comes and say something happened 6 months ago and they sat on it and they didn't want to lodge a complaint and then they decide to? Is that more of a statute of limitations? Would that prevent them from filing a complaint if it's past the 30 days? How would that work?
So to your first question, I think because council agreed to consider this in January in terms of the charter, we're on solid ground, so it can become active whenever it's adopted. But the timeline is yours to define. So that came from nowhere aside from just an example. So if you want to extend that out, that's up to you. That's at your discretion.
Yeah, I think from being an investigator at one time in my life, you get out too far and pretty soon the facts start to blur, stories start to mesh, and you don't necessarily get the same result in your investigation the further you get away from it. My thoughts. I mean, I'm comfortable with 30 days. People will sit on it, right? They'll be offended. We have 2 meetings within that 30 days. So people are going to mull it over, I think, maybe as to whether or not they feel it's significant enough that they want to lodge a complaint. Some people will just try to work it out between themselves, and that can happen within that 30 days. And then nobody's ever the wiser of it. But if that doesn't work it out, then, the investigator still needs to have because it'll take them some time. If you lodge the complaint on day 30, then you got to go through the process. Then you got to find some. Now we're out 2 months maybe before the investigator actually starts to turn their mind to it. So just from an investigator's perspective, I wouldn't want to go any longer than 30 days. My experience anyway. Councillor Andrews?
Yeah, I maybe change the wording a bit so it's encouraged to file your complaint within 30 days, but all complaints will be considered, or how to word that. So we wouldn't want someone have a day 35 and like, well, okay, I'm not gonna put it in. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but potential futures down the road, it could happen, right?
Yeah. Okay. So there's wording around the time, I think we're interested in.
And Mayor?
Yeah.
And also the timeline. So they file a complaint with the CAO. How long does he or she have to move the process forward? Like there's no timeline listed here. Like the CAO or the CAO and corporate officer will determine if the complaint is within the scope of the code. What, they can 60 days, 90 days, like, do you know what I mean? That could sit there for a while. I think that we need to have a bit of a timeline with this process. I don't know what the timeline is, but I think there needs to be something.
Define something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And there's also the thought that if it's an egregious breach of the code of conduct, you don't want it to continue to persist. So you want to kind of address it when it's reported and carry through as soon as possible. The ideal is that everyone's following it, so you want to correct course, I guess, once.
Yeah, I think the more egregious it is, the more likely it's going to happen quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to say so right then and there, and then you'll move on to it. Yeah. Okay, so I got that on there to create a timeline. Anybody else? So I will start with what I think are my serious is not the right term here. I guess priority, of comments that I think I'd like to see in there around conflict of interest. So I'd like to see that a little bit more robust with respect to the act is pretty clear when it comes to the requirement for somebody who is in conflict to declare that they're in conflict. But nowhere in the act does it give us the remedy if it doesn't. If it's not You know, if there's a perception of conflict by somebody else on the council and it's not self-declared by the councillor who may or may not be in conflict, but somebody thinks they're in conflict, there's no recourse for the council. Yet at the same time, there's a potential negative outcome of it, because if somebody from outside is to challenge the decision that ultimately gets made, the decision is quashed based on the fact that somebody was in conflict in the decision-making process, either direct pecuniary conflict or because they tried to influence the discussion in some way where they were in conflict. So I'm not sure if that belongs here in the code of conduct or if it belongs in the procedure bylaw that we have, right? So what is I'm just not sure which one of these it belongs in, but I think it belongs somewhere. Secondary to that is what action happens if there are a sufficient number of councillors who are in conflict that it jeopardizes your quorum, right? And, you know, I'll be clear with respect to some of the things that we've done and our nonprofits. We've got some people at this table who have declared conflicts because of that. And so if you're dealing with a nonprofit issue that involves money, potentially we could have no quorum in it. So what's the remedy there? And we may need a legal opinion with respect to that to find out like what can we and how far does it extend? Like we've changed our policy around grants to community groups and the new, remind me what it's called, the transfers, the governmental transfer policy. If there are enough of us, like how far before, because we're handling it a little bit differently than we handled it before. We handled it individually. And then each councillor who had a conflict with the individual group could step out of the room during that. But now we're sort of handling them as a group. And so as a group, there may be, right, because we're handling it in the entire budget. So how far does the conflict go into the budget process?
Okay, so can I just?
Yes, for sure.
That's not my understanding, that we are voting on that en masse. And I think it still needs the ones that are coming to council, because they're not all coming to council, right?
Mm-hmm.
But those ones that are over $15,000 are coming to council. It was never my understanding that we would be voting en masse. It was still my understanding that council retained the ability to vote on those applications.
Yeah. So I don't want to go down a rat hole of that.
Thank you.
Of that. I use it as an example because if you roll it all up and that were to be the case, then potentially we're a quorum issue. And that it's the quorum issue that I'm more interested in, not that particular example that I used. It's what happens if, you know, and if you are starting to get into quorum issues, how deep into a budget because it's generally around money. So I'll use the budget. How deep and when does it become all of us, right? It impacts all of us. Therefore, it's not a violation of conflict of interest. I guess that and I think that should be identified here in this section somehow. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so 2 points. First of all, I believe that situation that you are talking about right now belongs in the procedure bylaw, not in this policy. And I just lost my second point.
Maybe
All day long.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's why I asked the question. I asked staff to try to get a legal opinion for us as to where it belongs.
Okay. Well, that's where, right. Thanks. Sorry. So it was my understanding that the onus is on the individual council people to be declaring their conflict. And me as a council person, I thought that I did not have the ability to call out somebody else on their conflict.
Not in the act, but maybe we're allowed to modify that by procedure. Because there's lots of things that we put in procedure that and policy of the municipality that are not in the act. And so I'm thinking that and let's check it. Let's explore it. Let's find out where that is. Because if you take it through to its conclusion, your decision that involves a conflict can be challenged and squashed. So we have to have some way to deal with a non-declared conflict. To at least put it on the table. And then what's the remedy of that at that time?
So we're not the only council that would have those situations. So there's got to be something out there. But
and that's what I'm looking for.
Okay,
I'm looking for some meat to make this more robust around the conflict.
Okay.
And I'm not saying anybody has been there. I just would like to see this. And if it doesn't belong here, it doesn't belong here. But then where does it belong? Maybe over in the procedure bylaw. Next one was around the open meeting portion. Where did I find that? Because my sticky has slid down the page. Is it number 6? Council will decide on a resolution in an open meeting subject to privacy legislation. So if we're having a general discussion about the result of an investigation about one of us, and we're looking for what that remedy should look like, should that be an open meeting? So was that pulled in from somewhere else, or is there some thought around why that is?
Yeah, so one of the best practices is around having transparency on not necessarily the details of the breach, but certainly what council is seeking, how council is seeking to resolve the issue. So a lot of the challenges to the remedies have been around a lack of transparency when they were decided. So that's both to protect the person who caused the breach, but also the integrity of council's decision in seeking that remedy. So it's a fine line in terms of obviously maintaining privacy around the person and the details of the breach potentially, but also ensuring that there's transparency in the decision being made and what remedy council wants to seek. So if you're removing from a committee, if you're seeking a written apology, if there's, that all has to be in an open meeting.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think there's some examples that we have recently seen from a city in central BC that has had some experience with conflicts and council having to make a decision. And I don't know whether it was done in an open meeting, but the decision was certainly open and it made the press. And so to my way of thinking, that must have been in an open meeting then, not necessarily the discussions around all that, but that this individual was in breach of this and the remedy is that. So that was definitely reported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the debate about it becomes the difficult part, right? I hope we never get there, but if we don't talk about it while we're friends, it becomes very difficult to talk about when we're in the throes of a situation, right? And so it is difficult to talk about, but I think it's important that we talk through it. So, I get the transparent. I guess I'm uncomfortable, but I guess that's just an uncomfortable situation you have to deal with in the open, I guess.
And that's not to say that council can't debate the appropriate remedy in a closed meeting. but that the decision on the remedy is made in an open meeting. Right.
Oh, I see.
Resolution.
Oh, I see. So it's only the resolution necessarily that needs to come out and be talked about. Okay, well, that makes some sense then. So maybe we should put some wording around
Sure.
that then,
Okay.
to clarify that.
Yeah,
like
and
a
we can
rise and
speak to
report
the
word.
rationale as well.
Yeah, well, sure, because you're just you're just putting the resolution in open meeting, right? It's not. I'm more clear if the debate doesn't need to be in an open meeting. Unless for some reason we feel it should be in an open meeting. But I think wording around that, we should try to define some wording around that. We're doing for time. Okay, I think I have one last thing, and again, it's an either or. So if I go back to page 29 of 32, page 3 of 6 of the policy, it's conduct in specific context. So in council and committee meetings, the first bullet is there to prepare, attend, and participate in accordance with the procedure bylaw. I wonder if we should be setting some portfolio standards with respect here, or should that be in the remuneration bylaw? So essentially, what we're saying for conduct here is that we will prepare, attend, and participate in those meetings. Does that extend to the portfolios? And should that be in the code of conduct if we have a complaint with respect to action on the portfolios? Or should it be in the remuneration policy where people can be remunerated more or less for their participation in portfolios? Or should it not be discussed at all in these policies? And I guess my concern there is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we need to share that work across the entire scope of a council. And I think if somebody gets appointed a portfolio and doesn't feel they can handle it, then they should say they can't handle it. They can't fit it in their schedule. It's not part of their abilities, whatever. But I think those portfolios are part of our conduct, and I didn't set them up here. The portfolio process has been set up by councils in the past. They've been agreed to in the past by everybody that that's a way for us to handle some of the work that we do. And so therefore, there should be a recognition for those who are able, and the ability for those who are not to say that they're not. I think that should be part of this policy. Or it could be recognized in the remuneration policy, because the more you work your portfolios over, potentially the more you're recognized and remunerated for that. That's only my personal opinion. It's just a potential where that potentially can go. That deserves another whole discussion onto itself, but those are my thoughts on that.
Okay, so,
Deputy Mayor?
yeah, like I have a lot of thinking around that. But to start, I think step one, it should be clearly articulated to a council person coming in what that portfolio responsibility entails. And I don't know in my 12 years almost that has ever really happened. It's just like, okay, there's a broad outline, and then, well, you do with it what you have time, so I don't know that belongs in here, but I firmly believe that belongs somewhere, whether informally or formally, whether it's mayor duties, because the mayor is assigning the portfolio. I think there's lots of work to do around what each of those portfolios mean, what council wants to see happen with portfolio assignments. And I don't think that we have done that work. But I'm not sure it belongs here, but I absolutely believe that, and I would love to see that work done now during the end of our tenure in preparation for the next council coming in, because that hopefully will set them up for success.
Yeah, and that's why I put, should portfolio standards be set here? Because, right, because I think that's what we're really talking about. And whether it's here or somewhere else, you know, this is a code of conduct, how we act, how we participate in council as individually elected officials. So does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Okay, and then the last thing, because I'm conscious of time.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, so your remuneration policy is due for review. And so it's linked, but I don't expect you to have it in front of you, but there are factors under which you would consider its review, but portfolio assignments isn't one of them. So if that's something that you'd like us to include as an additional consideration, we could certainly do that.
Okay, so yeah, so there's the standards, and then there's the how are you recognized or held accountable to those standards. So is it really a separate policy?
Well, your review,
The like is the whole portfolio process process is probably not the right word, but is that the whole idea of having portfolios, should that be standalone?
yeah. It certainly could be.
And then from there, the accountability for that or the recognition for that, whichever way you want to look at that, could be referred to in the remuneration policy.
Yep.
Or not, depending on how council decides, right?
Yeah.
But that's the place to have the discussion about it.
For sure.
Okay, so there's two approaches to that.
Yep.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
captured that.
Because I might add, I mean, what this policy helps you is how do you actually have that discussion? What's the appropriate way to have the
Yeah.
discussion?
Yeah.
Right? So you can actually have the discussion as part of your other policy, but what this helps you is an appropriate way to have that discussion,
Right,
both ways.
yeah. Okay, and I guess the last one, and I skipped over it when I was talking about the open meeting part. So there's a written apology, a mandatory training, censure by council resolution, removal from committees or representative roles, referral to law enforcement if it's significant. Is there a place there for us to consider the remuneration? So whether or not, if somebody is in violation of this, there's potential for us to suspend either a portion or all of the remuneration to a councillor, or eliminate it, because that is a council policy. That's not in legislation anywhere. So if the remuneration is a council policy, we have the ability to affect it if we feel the violation is significant enough, or there have been multiple, it's not something you do for something minor, but if it's not in the policy as something to consider, you don't get the chance to consider it when the time comes. And I guess I will use the example of the situation in Bourque with respect, which have all been public information that we had to deal with. There were multiple violations of a policy like this. And at the regional district level, there was discussion about how to, there was the process that happened in the community itself with respect to the mayor, their council, and how that all eventually ended up in court. But then there was also a regional district response, because the mayor of Bourque at the time was also on the Peace River Regional District. And there was some thought to consider that, the bit about the remuneration, as a penalty for the what was considered at the time to be a negligence in the way they acted as an elected official. And so because it wasn't in the policy, there was no opportunity to consider that. So it doesn't have to be done, but if it's not in the policy, you can't even consider it. So I'm looking around the room to see about whether or not that's something you might want to consider putting in here.
I would need to percolate on that. So-
This is not finished, so
No,
we're gonna get more iterations of this
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't think I can give an opinion right now on that statement.
Okay.
And I would like some more information, some examples of, or is it in other communities' code of conduct? And then a legal opinion, like can you even legally do that?
Mm.
Yeah, some information I would need before I could even, venture to make, have an opinion on it either way.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Roper.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could dig into that further and if certain counselors are missing more meetings than other, do we reduce their remuneration? I mean, we could get right into that and we could get too far into it. So, I mean, we have protocols. If you miss a certain amount of meetings, you're off of council. And
That's
if you-
legislated.
That's legislated,
Okay.
but there's nowhere that says if you miss two and you come every third one, that you get paid less. And I don't know if that's for us to say or if it's for the taxpayers to decide at election season. So as far as I'm concerned, I mean, we're all making salary and it doesn't matter if we put in this much or this much. The ultimate decider is the taxpayer at election season. So I don't know how far we'd want to get into that, but I mean, everything you're saying is making sense. It's all part of a thoughtful approach. So
Yeah. So it's a policy of council which can be considered and it would, to me, it's part of the remuneration policy, which we have the ability to debate, discuss, and ultimately be held accountable to by ourselves and the electorate.
I would not like to see us all not on equal footing as far as remuneration goes. I wouldn't want to see someone making twice as much because they got this portfolio that maybe I wanted. Maybe I deserve that portfolio. And do I grieve that at that point because it's more money for me? Then it makes I think we're all on equal footing right now. And as far as remuneration goes, we're not making much as it is with the time we put in a lot of the time, right? So yeah, I don't know about providing more or less based on whether you did what you were supposed to do. I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
Okay, I think we've given some, I notice it's 10 after, so have you got some things to work on then?
No,
Okay.
happy to bring back some more information to the questions posed and where we can kind of another version of the draft.
Okay, thanks. So there's no new business. Is there any public that are looking to ask a question about the agenda online? No? Nobody in the room? We are adjourned. Thank you. See everybody in 20 minutes.